Okay, boys, so second time we are doing this year, guys who at least I think are going through a jump right now. First time I did this, we had Scotty, Maxi, Ant, Shengun. Now it's time for some new guys. And everybody here is either, in my opinion, going through like the first leap of their career, or they're still pretty early in their careers, or they're putting up numbers that were comparable to numbers earlier in their career, but they had a dip for a couple seasons. That one's going to count specifically for one guy towards the end of this. But for example, you look at somebody like Jalen Brunson, who's been great lately. But again, guys earlier in their career, making their first leap. Brunson's making, like, I don't know, his third leap right now. And while I am not here to debate All-Stars, we are going to start with Paolo, who did make his first All-Star game. I think the three clear, just jumps out at you immediately improvements that Paolo has made this year are his shots around the free throw line, his three ball, which is up to 36%, and his passing, which he's really been cooking with lately. Now, if you wanted to be a little bit of a hater, you could say, yeah, well, he's got a 54 true shooting. I believe that does not tell the whole story. Couple things with that. Number one, his effective field goal percentage went up. A lot of that because of the threes. Orlando's had a good amount of injuries this year. I mean, Franz is back now, but he had a recent stretch where he was out. Wendell has missed a lot of time. He's back now. Yes, Goga was good for them in Wendell's absence. Markel also missed a lot of time. He's back now. So, Paolo's had to carry more than you would really want him to in his second season. And also, as we all know, the Magic could use more shooting. Anyway, when I've been going through Paolo stuff, what I like the most is when they get him involved in actions that is more than just go ISO mode, which even then, I mean, he can obviously go bully ball, he can draw to make plays for guys, or just finish through dudes, of course. But I really like when, let's say it's like a horns action with him and Mo Wagner, to where Franz will dump it off to Paolo, and then from there it'll be like Mo Wagner cuts and Franz kind of relocates out of the way, and then Paolo can just go at Devin Booker and get really physical and hit him with like a turnaround hook shot jumper thing in the paint. Or in the Dallas game where Franz sets a quick screen for Paolo as he's coming up in transition, that gets the Luka switch, and then Paolo just goes straight line drive past Luka and finishes over Derek Lively, who had a really good just straight up contest. Of course, you've also got the times where like Wendell, when he has been healthy, which is for a little bit here, before that was like some Goga or Mo or whatever, just screening for him to where he can get into like the pull up too. And I mentioned the free throw line jumpers earlier. He's shooting 41% on shots in the paint, but not right at the rim. Last year, he shot 35% on those shots. And to be clear, I understand that 41% still not an amazing number on those shots, but it's definite improvement. And I think, maybe I'm being optimistic, I think there's signs there that he can keep building on this to one day get into like the mid to high 40s on these shots. And it's a lot of like one or two dribbles back down onto the defender, and then from there he's getting into like these turnarounds where he spins and then picks his dribble up at the same time going into them, or sometimes he gets a little more physical with it. An example being like in their recent Grizzlies game, like Anthony Black set a screen for him, and then he was able to get downhill just enough on Vince Williams, and he kind of bodied him with his shoulder to just create some space, and then he's hitting this like turnaround free throw line jumper. And I think these back downs are probably the most intriguing thing for him when it comes to his passing, because he will have these plays, I mean, his assist numbers have been pretty good lately, where he's just kind of backing down his defender. He did it a lot like against KD in the Suns game, and then he's just sort of surveying what's going on, whether it's like Anthony Black cutting, or it's Franz cutting, or in their recent Spurs game, there was like a play I remember where he legit draws like 3 Spurs. I think he backs down like Sohan, just, empty side, and then it's a kick to Franz for 3. And of course, he's got some plays where it's like he'll run a pick and roll with Wendell, and then he might hit him on a pocket pass, or it's like a skip to Jalen Suggs or whatever. Like Paolo, he's putting a lot of things together, man. And of course, still his biggest thing, which was noticeable right when he showed up in the NBA, the free throw drawing. He's at 7.5 free throws a game. And hopefully he can get his free throw percentage back up to. And then the last thing for Paolo, I think, will be if he can turn a few mid-range pull-ups that he attempts per game outside of the paint into more things in the paint. And some of that will be dictated on if the Magic can get more shooting on the floor with him. Next up, we go to Kaminga, who, I mean, all season Kaminga has been giving the Warriors some much-needed rim pressure. But he's especially been going nuts lately, and I feel like I could describe the way Kaminga's getting his buckets in only a few things. It's in and out dribbles that are a lot of time like straight line drives where defenders might be giving him a little bit of space, and then from there he's just being a big athlete, as basic as it sounds. Like once he gets some momentum, a lot of guys just can't really deal with him. Sometimes these will turn into like little turnaround jumpers around the paint or whatever, but he's also been kind of cooking on his back downs and his post-ups as well. And sure, sometimes he may be like a second screener in an action, or I remember a play recently where like he gets a DHO from Draymond, and then it was either Steph or Corey Joseph who set a second screen for Kaminga that allowed him to get downhill and get a dunk. So you're getting some of those moments. Just to give you some numbers, like especially recently, he's at like 6 shots per game at the rim, shooting nearly 80% from there. He's at 50% in the paint. He's got like 8 drives per game. And it can sometimes feel like such a contrast with the rest of the Warriors, right, where the ball's just swinging around the perimeter, and then in 1 second, Kaminga will catch it, and then before you know it, he's just in the paint. And to talk about the defense a little bit, when Kaminga and Draymond are on the court together, the Warriors' defensive rating is 108, and that's with like 150 minutes played with those two. Obviously, they got some ground to cover in the West, but if they got some good defensive lineups, that'll help. Also been grabbing boards, which is nice. I do think the long-term things with Kaminga are going to center around his playmaking and if he can get some separation between his assists and turnovers in time and all that. But as far as getting buckets and especially doing it in a way the Warriors would very much need for the rest of the season, yeah, he's doing it. Next up, we go to everybody's favorite player, J-Dub, who did just suffer an ankle injury. The language around it seems to be a couple of games. We'll see. I really enjoy watching Jaylen Williams finish around the basket because you get to see him use his long-ass wingspan in real time, try to figure out how to not get blocked. And he's been successful. He's shooting 71% at the rim. Granted, some of that is from his backdoor cuts, with which he is really good at finding those opportunities, where he might like relocate to the corner and his defender will think that he's just going to stand in the corner, but then he just keeps on going, and then before you know it, he's at the rim. But I do love when he's able to get like full extension with his arms off of like a Chet screen or a DHO or whatever, or just a drive when he's got the opportunity, and kind of using his body as a shield at the same time. I think for the season, I checked this, he's getting blocked 0.7 times per game, which is equivalent to like Anthony Edwards. Take that for what you will. There are many guys who get blocked more, we'll just say that. He's got some like double pump finishes that become layups or whatever. Like in their recent one against the Pistons, he had one play where Isaiah Stewart was helping at the rim on him, and he just kind of had to basically do like a double pump layup. Obviously, he's very talented. It also does not hurt to have a 7'2" wingspan. Besides that, the assist to turnover stuff is great. He's been flowing into these pull-up twos really well lately. His threes have been cooking. His defense is still awesome with the deflections. And I know like his steals are down for the year, but even so, his deflections are still there for the season. And, recently defensively, like in that Wolves game, they had him just wrestling with Cat because the Thunder messed with the matchups a little bit to start that game. In the Pelicans game, the Pelicans had 20 turnovers, and I would say if like a couple of them, while J-Dub might not have gotten the steal, he was like an integral part of the play, where he like hard doubles Brandon Ingram as he's driving, which forces a pass out, and then the Pelicans got kind of uncomfortable and they got a turnover out of that. I've already said that, I think this was in my Thunder video from like a month or two ago now. I just love when he goes between the legs on the dribble, man. There's just something about J-Dub with his wingspan, the way that he chains that with crossovers and everything, it's so good. Now we go to Coby White, who's been getting buckets for months now. The one word that keeps popping up in my head when I watch Coby White operate this year, man, is shifty. He is just freezing defenders, whether it's like size ups, where then it goes into a between the legs dribble and he's gone in a straight line, or these hesitation or change of pace dribbles where he freezes a defender for a second, then he's gone. Like it's a lot of that. I mean, I can give you like random little plays here. One in a Raptors game that stuck out to me where he catches the ball, RJ is guarding him, and he takes this one like stationary dribble to sort of freeze RJ in place for a second. Then he goes straight line for a little bit. Then it's a super quick crossover where he beats RJ to the spot. Then he picks up his dribble like right at the rim basically, and he kind of like uses his body at an angle to where RJ can't block him or whatever. We've got like these big sweeping crossovers or big gather steps. He had one of those for like a 3-point play in a Hornets game recently. He's been kind of fearless at the rim. Now, as far as like how he's getting these shots, I mean, it's pick and roll, it's DHOs and stuff. As far as the three ball, which has also been huge for him and probably the biggest thing, he's making some deep threes, man. I mean, he's making some catch and shoots, a lot of them above the break, where he's a foot or two behind the line for a lot of these, and it's no hesitation as he goes up with these things. He's also got this like quick hop step move that he will use that a lot of the time allows him to create just enough separation off his defender to where he can get to like these free throw line jumpers, with which he's shooting like 50% on shots in the paint, but not right at the rim. If I didn't mention, he's got these like scoop shots that allow him to not get blocked around the rim. And as far as his passing, I mean, it's pocket passes to Vooch off of the screen. It's finding Drummond on rolls. It's kickouts to Caruso. If DeRozan is involved in like a double screen action, they do like to do the like Coby White throw the ball to Vooch and then immediately run and get the DHO, and then from there he's going to do what he does. Like, Coby White's been good, and as far as the big picture thing for the Bulls, like, yeah, it obviously makes it easier to trade LaVine, and it seems like both sides want that based on all accounts at this point. Now, whether the Bulls can actually get a return that they like, well, the news around that does not suggest the best thing. Now let's go to Collin Sexton, who's been getting buckets and making plays for the Jazz. Now you may say, wait a minute, Sexton has averaged 24 points a game before. He's like 6 years into his career now. Why does he get here? I think it's because his passing has looked maybe the best it's ever looked, and we'll get to that towards the tail end of this part. But also, I feel like the narrative is kind of changing with Sexton, where I feel like there were questions of, well, can he get buckets efficiently on a team that's winning? And the Jazz, at one point this season, were 8 games below 500, and then they proceeded to win almost every game they played for a month. So I feel like it can count. So the big thing with the Jazz, not too recently now, was they went with the starting 5 of Chris Dunn, Markkanen, Sexton, John Collins, and Fontecchio, and since then their season turned around a lot. Now, as I say that, they are currently going through a rough patch. We will see, but the overall thing is, yes, they had a big turnaround. And so the floor is very spaced out, and as far as Sexton is concerned, kind of anybody is screening for him, whether it's Collins. It feels like it's Collins the most, but I mean, you've got him. When Walker Kessler and him play together, there's that. Fontecchio is screened for him. Markkanen screened for him. We've seen some occasionally Chris Dunn or like Jordan Clarkson ghosting a screen for Sexton. You've just got Sexton going downhill kind of like a madman. You know, I mentioned with Coby White that it's like a shiftiness and a change of pace and all that. With Sexton, it's more like a straight line drive aggressiveness. His free throw numbers are a little higher than you would typically expect for a guard of his size. He's shooting like 5 shots per game at the rim. And for the season, he's at 17 a game. But if you were to go over the last like a month and a half, he's over 20 a game. Is that his passing is probably the best that it's ever been. And you've got your passes to Collins on the roll or lobs to Collins. Similar thing with Walker Kessler. You've got Sexton finding Markkanen on those down screens that they run for him, which, I mean, that's always been my favorite thing that the Jazz do with Markkanen. We got a few more at the tail end here. I'm going to talk about RJ again. I know like 2 weeks ago I talked about him in my I love the OG Anunoby trade so far vid. But if I'm going to call a guy inconsistent as hell when he gets traded, then I think it's fair for me to acknowledge when he's been really good. But just for another update, he has missed the last couple of games, but the drives just continue to look great, man. I mean, in that video, I was talking about how they were giving him like empty side actions. Lately, it feels like it's been a little bit more of like starting him from the corner and then, you know, him getting a down screen and then catching it on the move, or him finding opportunities to cut off of like quickly running something or Scotty or whatever. Just decisive and agile on drives and just angling his body in a way to where it just looks good between the gather steps and the whole thing. And finally, Cam Whitmore. Look, man, it's threes, it's drives. And these drives are like, I'm putting my head down and I'm going to the rim and I do not care who's in front of me. Now to go along with that, yeah, his assist numbers are not very high. And for his season overall, he's got more turnovers than assists. That being said, lately, the turnovers have been pretty chill. And so, I mean, if you're not going to be a high assist guy, but you're also not going to be a high turnover guy, then that does help. I mean, we'll see long term with that stuff, of course, with him.